So I'm going to start today with some things that were submitted earlier this week. And the first is about bullying and whether or not to send a child to school versus online learning. And this parent wrote in, "My son had a horrible sixth grade year with bullies and threats to hurt himself right at the end when COVID closed things down early. That was actually a relief for us. He's not interested in starting seventh grade. I'm sick to my stomach thinking about it too. I don't know that online or homeschooling is a valuable option, especially if I end up having to go back into my office anytime soon. How do you decide what will screw up your kid less?" Well, this is a really difficult question, and I'd like to reframe it instead of how do you decide what will screw up your kid less to something a little bit more positive that would be what is in my child's best interests, given that there are so many complications we're dealing with. And so what I would like to say to this parent is that sixth grade is a tough year. I myself was actually bullied in sixth grade, and we moved to a new town, and there was a boy in my class who didn't like that I was smart and challenged him, and people spit on me and put worms in my lunch. It was pretty horrible. I actually went to seventh grade though, and what I did was in my school district there were two middle schools, so I went to the one that was on the other side of town. I had to get permission to do that, and that actually made a huge difference for me because I was able to start again. And I made some friends, and actually the two of the female friends that I had at my sixth grade were in that new school. And I'm telling you this story not because what happened to me is the answer for your child, but that I do think that it's important for kids who've been bullied to actually have an opportunity to try again. Of course, right now, this is a big of course, given what's happening with COVID in our country, I'm not sure that kids will be going to school. In fact, I think many kids will be doing some kind of hybrid learning with the first part of the school year, certainly again, homeschooling, which brings up a whole set of other issues that we can talk about at a future date. It's hard when you've been bullied. And one of the things that's hard about being bullied right now in our society is that it doesn't stop. You know, when I was in sixth grade, I took my bus home and there was nothing. I didn't have my cell phone. I didn't have any cell phone, you know, it was the 1970s. And, you know, I had a reprise and a relief from the stress that I was going through when I was being bullied. Today, kids don't get that reprise or relief. It's constant. And they can make one small mistake or say one thing that wasn't maybe the best choice, and it's all over social media, and they're mocked, and it lives forever. And so I think that's really difficult for us as parents to try to balance out what is in my child's best interest. But ultimately, your son needs to learn how to make friends and how to feel good about himself socially. That's just as important as academics, if not more so right now, particularly in seventh grade. So how can we help your son feel good about himself? What is the arrangement that's going to make that happen? So is there a way to help him when he goes to seventh grade? Well, he'll get the opportunity to start over. Can he be on a different team? Can you request which team he's on and that he's not with those kids? That would be particularly useful. I think secondarily, it would be great for him to work with someone, preferably a therapist, who can help him deal with the anxiety that he's going to face around seeing peers, and some tools and skills that he can build to do so successfully. So I wish you good luck for that. The second question came up with was around the issue of perceptions and accountability. So one parent writes, "I wish there was a way I could believe my son, who's 10. Every camp or activity we put him in, there is always a problem with another boy. I literally don't know if half the things he tells me are true about what happened. I can't be the mom who always goes to the coordinator or the coach and asks to move him or pull him from an activity. I support you in making that choice. We just started him with a therapist. Good. I think that's really important. And he's on meds, 10 milligrams of Adderall XR. These are great interventions that you've created. I want to believe he is in the right during these situations, but it's hard because they're a pattern. Well, you're very wise here to notice that A, your son needs extra help. He needs extra support, and he needs some therapy to figure out how to engage socially. And therapy is a great option for that, because in their therapeutic relationship, kids will act the way they act with other people. They may not have the same kinds of aggression, but in my work, what I've seen is kids who cheat, they cheat with me. Kids who say inappropriate things to me. And so I'm able to work with that material in the therapy. I also do work with parents to help parents guide their kids and redirect their kids when they're doing these things at home, so we can start to increase awareness about them. The benefit of being on the Adderall is it will assist with impulse control, but it will also help your child slow down and pause enough to hopefully regroup and perhaps edit himself before he launches into something. When there is a pattern of peer problems like the one you're describing, it's hard for kids, particularly kids with ADHD, because they feel a sense of failure, of shame, and then they continue to act often in the problematic way. That's because they can't access the choices that are better choices in the moment when they need them, because of challenges with working memory or processing speed. So we want to help these kids come up with a few things to say, like, oh, that's interesting, let me think about it, or I'm not sure about the answer to that question, I'll get back to you, to slow things down so they can actually access some time to recall what they should say, or they can turn to a trusted friend or a teacher or an aide in the classroom to ask for some advice. It's hard for these kids to pull up the proper responses in the moment, so we want things to slow down. I would love to hear from you about any of these two topics that I've covered so far. So the first is about bullying. Has your child ever been bullied? Please let me know if your child's been bullied and how did you handle that. I'd like to hear some success stories if you have them, and some challenges. So if you have a child who was bullied, please let me know about that situation and how you handled it. If you have a child who has a problem with peer relationships, a pattern like this parent is describing, and also a child who lies, let me know what's going on. I'd love to hear from you. So I want to hear about bullying, and I want to hear a little bit about social challenges with patterns of friend difficulties. And thirdly, I'd like to hear about lying. This is a topic that a lot of parents ask me about. So send in some examples from your lives. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, so while I'm waiting to hear, and I don't see anybody writing, so come on, you guys. I know some of you out there have had some bullying challenges, some lying, some peer problems. This is your opportunity to send me a question or summarize your situation so I can assist you. And believe me, your example your experience and your example will serve everyone else who is watching. And I want to also say, don't worry if you feel ashamed or you're worried about your privacy. What we talk about here stays, as far as I'm concerned, stays here. And my experience is that people are very grateful for you, those of you who share your situation. So I'm just going to see if anyone else. Oh, a lot of people have said some things. Great. Let's see. How can I get better focusing? ADHD doctors. I'm here in the Faroe Islands. Told me I can't. I'm going to prove them wrong. Bjarki, I don't know about that, but I would encourage you to look into the Attitude resources list. And you may have to do some online consultation, and this of course is a great time to do that because everyone's doing online consultations. Amanda asks, can you give some opinions on medication, Adderall versus Zoloft for a kid with ASD and ADHD? So I'm not a physician, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I don't give medication recommendations, but what I can say is that Adderall works specifically for on the neurotransmitters of dopamine and norepinephrine, I think. It works on the neurotransmitters that directly affect ADHD, where Zoloft is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which is a different neurotransmitter, serotonin, and they do different things. One of the things that I think that would be helpful for you, Bijarki, is to contact or look also into CHAD to see if you can get some consultation from someone who is in your area or speaks your language. Nina asks, how do we help a child stand up for themselves, such as saying okay to getting friends' bike instead of getting it yourself? I see. So sometimes kids with ADHD will try to ingratiate themselves to their peers by bending over what we would say backwards to accommodate them or do nice things for them. They want to act in ways because they think kids will like them better if they get their bike, if they give them their lunch, and that actually is kind of a falsehood, right? So we want kids to start to feel like a friendship is reciprocal. So if you're getting someone's bike or you're giving someone the treat from your lunch every day and they're not giving anything back to you, then that isn't a reciprocal relationship, right? So we want to teach kids, what does it mean to have give and take? And we want that to be balanced. Standing up for yourself isn't necessarily with your hands on your hips saying blah, 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 blah. But standing up for yourself is having enough, seeing that you have enough value as a person that you don't have to capitulate to other kids so much, that you can say yes and you can say no. Annalise Sullivan, my daughter was shit out of friend group in 8th grade near the end of the year. There was a pattern of friend difficulties with that group. She now swears she doesn't need friends at 27 years old. Okay, so she clearly has some trauma that's hanging around from that 8th grade year, you know, a good 13 years later. My guess is that, you know, she's afraid. And at 27, you can't even lead them to water. You can talk about your concern about that, but it's really up to her. And that's a sad and very frustrating place for a parent to be. You could reflect back to her at times very neutrally when she says statements that reflect that she's lonely or on her own. You could say, wow, I hear that you're feeling lonely or on your own. I wonder if it might be valuable for you to talk to someone. Point her in the direction kindly and gently and with as much compassion as you can. She was hurt pretty badly, it sounds like, and it's hard, particularly now with COVID, making friends, seeing friends. It's so tricky for our millennials. They're not sure what to do and how to do it. My son will lie to me about silly stuff like whether he... Carrie, I need you to finish the sentence. I don't know what it is. So I want to hear what that is. So please finish your entry. Annalise, you're feeling that she swears she doesn't need friends at 27. She feels shut out. I understand that. It's very important. I want to say one other thing about the 27-year-old daughter. It's important to help our millennials find something where they feel like they're contributing. That might be a great way for her to meet people who have a like-minded orientation and interests. That way the purpose isn't necessarily about making friends, but the purpose is about engaging in the world, sharing herself, and seeing if what she'll get back might be, you know, hope might be something that is positive, that's rewarding, so she can see that actually people value her. Jose says, my 9-year-old makes fun of other kids, but then feels bad if other kids tell on him. He feels like no one likes him. So this is a common refrain for kids with ADHD. They often feel like kids don't like them. And part of the reason is because kids with ADHD get a lot of negative feedback. Feedback about what they could be doing differently, feedback about how they've, stepped in a puddle or a hole when they didn't even know it. They're just walking along, doing their thing, and boom, they fall down because they've said or done something that other people find disruptive or inappropriate. And so it's easy to feel like kids don't like you because you may have a big personality. You may struggle with impulse control, verbal control as well. And so kids will perhaps treat you differently. So we want to help your son actually make one friend at a time. Kids really need 2 friends. One, the person they're with, and one in case the person they're with isn't available. He doesn't need a whole posse, right? He's making fun of other kids because he's trying to get people to laugh, and then that would feel like they liked him and they approved of him. What are some other things that he could do to actually make friends? And this means practicing. And the place where he's going to practice is at home or on an outing with you. He's not quite skilled yet. Remember, kids with ADHD have brains that can develop up to 3 years in their executive functioning skills behind neurotypical kids. And so that means he's going to be a bit younger than his same age peers. So we want to assist him in doing something with another child where you're around, like theoretically maybe going to play mini golf with your masks on, or riding bicycles and getting ice cream, something where you can assist your child in making those connections so that they're appropriate. Then over time, he can have more time alone. I know that sounds like, oh my God, so much work, right? But the fact is that kids with ADHD do struggle making friends, and they feel bad about themselves because of it. And so they're trying really hard to boost themselves in their naturally immature kind of way. And because they notice that when kids put them down, other kids laugh, they're going to try to put kids down for the same reaction, only often it backfires because they don't completely understand the social dynamics that are going on, or they're late in responding. So we want to try to offer them some tools. Tanya Lynn, my son lies. He's 15 and doesn't seem to be getting better. Carrie says, my son lies about everything. I literally can't believe anything that comes out of his mouth. Well, this is just terrible. I have to say that one of the thing that gets me crazy is, kids lying, whether they lie to me at my practice, whether my kids, when they were growing up, lied. I just have zero tolerance for that. And so I really feel for parents when their kids are lying. So let's talk about, why do kids lie? I'd love to hear from you why you think kids lie. Let me know why you think kids lie. Kids lie often because A, they don't want to face up to the truth of what they're doing, mostly because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble. Kids lie because they're embarrassed about something they did and they don't want you to know about it. And 3, kids lie because they want to try to get away with something that they know they're not supposed to do. So when you lie, however, you create an environment of distrust. And no one wants to live in a party of distrust. So something weird just popped up on my screen. I'm not sure what it is. Somebody said, oh yes, kids lie not to disappoint. I agree. So kids lie not to disappoint. Kids lie because they're embarrassed, definitely. Kids lie because they want to try to get away with something that they know they're not supposed to do. And finally, kids lie because they're ashamed. They're ashamed of something that they've done. So we have to set up a fairly neutral territory. The other thing that I think is really important, particularly with teenagers want you to trust them, right? They want you to trust them so they can go out and do this and that and the other thing. But trust is a bank account, right? You make a deposit and then you can make a withdrawal. When someone lies to you over and over again, they're making withdrawals all the time. So there's no trust in the account. There's no money left in the account. How can you and your child work together to build up their trust account? And that means following through on some things, following through on a chore, following through when you ask them to do something, following through when they say they're going to be home at 10 p.m., being home at 10 p.m. These are things that build trust. And for kids with ADHD who are concrete thinkers, we have to lay them out very specifically. And I would talk about this bank account very openly with kids because you want to trust your kids and they want to be trusted. So lay out what this trust bank account would look like. Talk with them, ask them why they think they're lying to you and how they would like to do it differently. And what's one area that they're lying about that both of you agree you'd like to change sooner than later? And then try to make some deposits in that area. Melissa asks, how do you handle a bullying situation if the child that is the bully is the bully of your friend's child? Okay, I think I understand what you're saying. You have a friend and they have a child, and their child is bullying your child. Well, does your friend know that their child is bullying your child? So if their friend knows that their child, I'm going to say if your friend's child is bullying your child and your friend knows it, that's one set of circumstances. And in that set of circumstances, there's room for plenty of open conversation. Hey, you know that your child has been historically a little rough on my child or has been teasing my child, and I'm hearing reports that that's going on. What do you think we can do as parents to shift that? If, however, your friend doesn't know that their child is bullying, that's a different situation, and that's a very complicated situation, because in that situation, you have to take the high road. And the high road is actually making a time to talk to your friend face-to-face online or, with masks and physical distance, in which you say, I'm concerned about some of the things I'm hearing from my child about what's going on with your child. And I wonder what you're hearing. You ask questions and you share small parts of information. Again, asking her, what do you think we can do together to ameliorate this situation? Or how can we help our kids do a better job? It's not an or, it's kind of an and. What could we do, if anything, to ameliorate this situation? And how can we help our kids do a better job? Because you're intervening directly depends on the age of your kids. If your kids are 15, it's probably not going to work so well. If your kids are 7, that'll work better. Lucy says, my daughter is 9 and can be a pushover and easily be manipulated because she is a people pleaser, because she wants to have friends. Also, I don't know if it's lying, but when she has to do her chores, something always hurts her head, her feet, and she accidentally steps on something or hits herself. I'm laughing because it's kind of it's amusing that every time she has something that she needs to do for you, she stumbles. Being a people pleaser, a lot of females are people pleasers. We're raised to value and to basically value ourselves through our relationships with other people. And so one of the ways that girls learn how to do this is by pleasing other people, particularly at the expense of themselves. Unfortunately, what happens is that you lose your sense of self. It becomes all about what other people think. And there's a great metaphor for this that I learned a long time ago, which is we all have an approval cup. And, we can fill it up. Ideally, we fill it up. But a lot of times what we learn to do is we hold out our approval cup to other people and we ask them to fill it up. And that's really treacherous because people may or may not fill it up. And if you're not able to fill it up yourself, then you're living in a world where your sense of self depends on whether or not people like you, or approve of you. And particularly for kids with ADHD, because of often their sensitivity to negative feedback and criticism, they overcompensate by trying sometimes to please other people in ways that we wish they wouldn't, right? That more of the ability to stand up for themselves. But we have to teach them how to do that responsibly and appropriately, because standing up for yourself isn't necessarily just yelling at people. Standing up for yourself is being able to say, you know, I don't really want to do that. Thanks for asking. Or, you know, that wasn't, I didn't appreciate that, or that felt bad when you said that, or I don't think I want to play with you right now. I didn't like how you're talking to me. You know, these are hard things for kids to learn how to say, but they will come, if we can work with them to come up with some phrases, they'll translate it into their own language, and then they can use it and hold on to it. And I think in the case, Lucy, of your daughter and her chores, I don't think that's necessarily lying. I think that's avoidance. And that's something that I think gets very confusing for kids with ADHD, because a lot of times the lying is a delay maneuver. Right? Oh, I hurt my foot. I can't do that right now. I want to avoid doing the thing I don't enjoy doing. And that has to do with the challenges they have with their dopamine, because dopamine helps us with our reward systems. And for those of us who have, you know, adult and neurotypical levels of dopamine, we can say, ugh, I don't want to take out the trash, but I know that after I take out the trash, I'll be done with taking out the trash. So I'm going to feel good about that. So I'm going to do that. That's, you know, sort of internal motivator. But for kids with ADHD, that's really hard for them, and it takes longer to develop. So they need some types of external motivators. Once you take out the trash, you can watch your TV. Or once you take out the trash, we can play a game of cards. Something like that to get them to do it. Also pointing out the process. I notice that when I ask you to do chores, there are these accidents that happen. Why do you think that? That seems like a pattern. You know, why do you think that's going on? What's tough for you about doing the chores? Jamie says, my son always lies. When he is confronted with a situation, his first response is always a lie. Yes, you know what? It's like a reflex, right? I'm gonna lie, I'm gonna avoid, I'm gonna deny. I don't want to be accountable. The accountability feels bad. And, you know, of course, Brene Brown has done so much wonderful research on shame, but as soon as he's done something, as soon as he's in a situation, he's going to lie about it right away, because the shame, the accountability feels too much for him. It's too much for him to process, and so he's going to sneak. Jamie goes on to say, "Did you sneak downstairs and play a video game?" Nope, but the game system tells me someone was playing it till 3 a.m. Nope, it wasn't me, and someone was logged into your profile. Couldn't have been me. A few hours later, after receiving the consequence, I have to tell the truth. I did play it this morning. He's 12, but the lying has been consistent since he was 2. Right. So his reflex is, I'm going to lie. I'm going to deny what I did in the hope that you won't find out, which of course doesn't work, because you are finding out. And so the conversation really has to be about that trust. I want to trust you, but you're not acting in ways that I can trust you. And so therefore we're going to set up mechanisms. You have a mechanism that he's gaming at 3 a.m. So asking him and having him lie about it and continuing to press him about how he's lying seems like, you know, kind of you're kind of chasing your tail in a circle. Instead, I would just say, well, you know what? The system doesn't lie. You were playing at 3 a.m. You're the only one who plays. I know that you were doing that. Walk away. Don't try to engage him in that moment for a conversation about telling the truth. At a separate time, when things are calmed down, say, I want to trust you, but when you lie to me like you lied to me about the game, or you lied to me about this, I can't. So if you want to earn your trust back and get your gaming back, or whatever the consequence was that you created, you're going to have to follow the rules. And I will be checking on the gaming rules to make sure you are. And each time you are, you're making a deposit in a bank account that means I can trust you. I want to trust you, and I think you want to be trusted. Part of the reason kids with ADHD lie is because of their poor impulse control. They do something automatically, they say something automatically, and they don't know how to say, yes, I did that, but I don't want to face the consequences for it, right? I lied, but I'm lying because I don't want to be caught. I don't want to deal with the consequences of what it means. What they haven't quite caught up with in their brains is that actually you know what the truth is. You're trying to get them to tell you the truth. They don't want to do that. I'm curious, me, Sharon, why they don't want to tell you the truth when you already know it. What do they think they're going to get out of not telling you the truth? That one time you're going to believe them and they'll get away with that. That's highly unlikely. And if they get away with that, what does that mean? Does that mean you want to live in a house where you're lying to me and trying to get away with things and hopefully I don't catch you? Because when I do catch you, which I do, and I have your whole life since you were 2, what happens then? That's what we want to reduce in our relationship. We want to increase trust and communication and minimize lying and falsehoods. Emily says, my son is 13 and has had trouble turning in missing assignments. When we spoke every day after school, he would tell me he completed all his work at school. I do know he has trouble with organization, but would like to know if you have any strategies for getting more honest answers from him after school. So in general, I think the expectation for many kids who have ADHD that they're going to do their homework when they get home from school and you're not there is a lose-lose proposition. Your kids come home from school, many kids with ADHD, the last thing they want to do is their homework. Their brains are tired. Their brains want a break. They want to relax. And that's fine if you can be there to supervise them. But if you're at work and they're at home, it's going to be really difficult for them to tell you the truth. So perhaps the assumption that he's going to do his work after school needs to shift into you're going to do your work at night. And that's going to be harder for him because he won't have, if he's taking medication, he may not have that in his brain. Long-acting medications usually wear off by the time the evening comes. So this is worth a conversation that you brainstorm with him. And also, what could he earn if he did his homework as he said he was? What extra privilege would he like? I mean, what extra screen time often it is? And how can he show you that the work is done? Because if he's lying to you, then you can't trust his word. So we have to trust his actions. Melissa, my ADHD kiddos ruminate on when bullies from years ago are around. I just can't move. I just can't move. Well, you don't have to. I protect them, but the bullies don't even speak to them any longer. But my kids, 7 and 8, panic going outside. They fascinate about hurting the bully, tell me how they're going to protect each other, but the threat isn't there anymore. So your kids are running a tape in their heads that people who've hurt them are going to continue to hurt them, even if they're not around. So what they're telling you, what they're showing you with their behavior, and they're telling you is, I don't feel like I can cope. I don't feel like I have the skills. And it sounds like you're protecting them and the bullies don't speak to them, but they're afraid now that other people will become bullies and they don't have the resources to stand up to them. So to me, what I would encourage you to do is try to create some role plays with your kids. Their kids are very close in age, so that's lovely. So one person could be a bully and one person could be the so-called victim, and you could act out some situations and then switch and help your kids practice this skill. They need practice with this skill. You cannot protect them from everything, and the best way that they're going to move through this is to be able to say, I want to have friends. I want to feel safe in the world. I'm going to have to learn how to take this on by doing this or saying that. Megan asks, is this supposed to be a questions about kids? Sorry, I just joined. No, Megan, it can be about anything. Talking about any sort of open topic today. We've been talking about bullying, anger, and lying. Melissa, it was more of it's more the kid wasn't kind, not necessarily a bully. I see. Okay. Well, sometimes kids aren't kind. I mean, that's just the reality. And so when someone's not kind to you, how are you interpreting that? Are you interpreting that I deserved it? Are you interpreting that this person's going to move from unkind to dangerous? And, we have to sort of look at what the thoughts are and the assumptions and break those down and come up with ways to counter them. Lisa, hi from Watertown, South Dakota. Hi, Lisa. I enjoy your live sessions and advice. My day is going okay. Julie, my black son is not very welcome by his hockey friends. I intervened, but I think it's making things worse. And my son doesn't want me to protect him. He's 11. I feel guilty because his image of himself is bad. Because of me, I have the same problem myself. So, Julie, thank you for sharing. My question is he the only black student on this hockey team? Because that's that's a very complicated situation and a tough position for him to be in. Or are there other kids? Is it a diverse hockey team where he has where he might have allies? You intervened. I'm curious how you intervened. And you can't protect your son. You're right. He's right. You can't protect him. The question is, when you're dealing with bullying, we have to deal with what are useful interventions that kids can do themselves, things they feel comfortable saying. And when bullies are empowered by bystanders. And what are the bystanders doing? Does he have any allies in the kids who aren't bullying him? I must tell this very funny story. I'm in my 50s, and in my 40s my son played for this travel soccer team, and we went to this weekend tournament, and it was our first year on the team, and the mothers, like after the game, some of the fathers went to play tennis or whatever, and so I turned to the mothers and I said, hey, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, we're not sure. And this one like literally turned their back on me and talked among themselves, and like after a few minutes I kind of tapped her on her shoulder. I'm like, well, can I join you? And she's like, well, we all don't have to do the same thing. I was like, I'm in my 40s. I was already bullied when I was younger. It was incredible to me. And so I walked away from the group and I went to the other outliers. Okay, there was maybe 5 other mothers who didn't know anybody either. And I went up to them and said, hey, do you want to go to the beach with our boys? And they're like, oh, so nice of you to ask. And of course, ultimately, the bullying mothers were like, oh, look, they formed a group. Now we should get to know them and be friends. Now, that's very different for boys who play hockey. Nonetheless, the concept is the same, and there's been research to support it, that you want to try to help kids who have been bullied find some allies. And let's see, I just want to know if Julie responded, so I'm going down. Julie, I do not see that you've responded. Yes. Okay. There you are. Yes, in his team. Okay. So does he have any friends in this team? And if not, can you assist him in pursuing any relationships with kids who like him? Okay. Because if someone likes you, okay, the door is open. Right? What did Emily Dickinson say? I think Emily Dickinson said, when one door closes, a window opens. I'm not sure it was Emily Dickinson, but you know what? If the door to the main cliquey group of boys is closed, is there an open window? And the way that you could facilitate that friendship is, doing something with one of those other kids or 2 of those other kids. Something where you are bringing them somewhere, they're doing their own thing, but you're kind of, and trying to be a cool mom. Take them someplace they want to go, get them food they like after practice or something, something where he can be seen socializing and start to build some of these other relationships. Okay. So let me check the time. Oh my gosh, we have 5 minutes left. Let's see. Jessica asks, is spanking ever okay as a discipline for a 5-year-old child? I'm going to be honest, Jessica, I don't support spanking at all under any circumstances. I think, but it's a personal decision, but I personally do not support spanking. Heather, hi. Someone responded to Jessica, it never worked for me. The reason spanking doesn't work is because punishment doesn't teach any skills. Your child, it's just a fear-based response, meaning it's an anger-based response that promotes fear. I'm sorry. So when you're spanking a child, you're teaching them to be afraid of you. And yes, we want our kids to respect our authority, but straight up fear isn't necessarily the way to go. Nico asks a question. My son is 9 and he's struggling to eat with others. He does not like the spit and chewing concepts. If he makes a comment, kids will go at him. How can I support him? Jessica, me neither, but I need an expert to tell my husband because he still thinks it will help. Okay, I'm telling your husband, spanking does not help. I hope that assists you, Jessica. So Nico, so one of the things that happens for kids with ADHD is they can, about 10 to 20% of kids have sensory issues. And so when they're sitting around other people who are chewing and swallowing and it can be super triggering. And if you have a child with ADHD who also is on the spectrum, that can be particularly intense. So I think one of the things that I would ask your son is, what is the thing that bothers him the most? Is it the spitting? Is it the chewing? Is it throat clearing? And in those moments, what are some options for him that are socially appropriate? He doesn't know what to do, and so he's asking people to stop, which of course makes sense. Someone's doing something that's bothering you, say stop, but it's socially alienating. So what else could he do? Could he wear earplugs at meals? I know that would make it difficult to hear what people are saying, but it might also help lower the volume on some of those bodily functions. Yillian, I'm going to take one more question and then it's clearly time to stop. How can I explain ADHD to my daughter in a way that doesn't allow her to use it as an excuse for her behaviors, instead to learn to manage it? I don't want her to feel bad about herself. Okay, well, this is a great place to end. And for those of you who did not have your questions answered, come back next week and we can continue to talk about lying and hitting and also bullying. It seems like these are big issues. Also, I wanted to talk about this concept of flipping a switch, what to do when kids get really angry with outbursts. So we'll put all that together for next week. We'll continue a little bit on bullying, we'll do some more on lying, and we'll talk about angry outbursts. But for today, I would like to answer Yillian's question. So the way that I explain ADHD to kids is I basically say, I don't call it ADHD because no kids really want to have a disorder. I call it, for kids who have inattentive ADHD, I call it attention wandering. For kids who have hyperactive impulsive ADHD, I might call it fast brain or active brain. I put it in scientific terms. We all have different brains. Your brain is a brain that wanders off and gets distracted kind of easily. Your brain is a brain that makes your body want to move around a lot. And then I couch it in chemicals. So some brains make a lot of chemicals that make you really happy, and some brains make a lot of chemicals that help you focus a lot. Your brain doesn't have quite enough chemicals on the focusing, distractibility area, and so we're teaching you those skills. So I think it's important, and if you want more specifics on how to talk to kids about an ADHD diagnosis, I would encourage you to go to my website, www.drsharonceline.com, and also, not to be shamelessly self-promoting, but to check out my book. I have a whole chapter on how to talk to kids about their diagnoses.